In these clips, we see Japanese soldiers surrendering to U.S. forces. Surrendering Japanese soldiers were a rare occurrence. There were 69 Germans residing in U.S. POW camps for every Japanese prisoner. Common theory is that Japanese soldiers did not surrender due to their Bushido warrior code, which forbade surrender. While significant, this is only one of 8 reasons why the Japanese were hesitant to surrender, and as we shall see, it is not even likely the number one reason. The intent of this video is to review and list the 8 reasons why Japanese military personnel were reluctant to surrender, and the methods used by the U.S. Psychological Warfare Intelligence Group to encourage the Japanese soldier to surrender. Let's start by looking at the overall World War II POW stats listed from this table from a 1955 Department of the Army document on POW utilization. The columns represent the number of German, Italian, and Japanese POWs interned in U.S. mainland camps during World War II. At their respective peaks, the U.S. interned 372,000 Germans, 51,000 Italians, and 5,400 Japanese. That's 69 German POWs interned for every Japanese POW interned. This page lists the number of Japanese dead and surrendered during the Iwo Jima campaign from a 1945 declassified Iwo Jima intelligence report. Roughly 21,000 enemy soldiers died. The number of enemy soldiers dead is an estimate, given some bodies may have been double counted and some soldiers may be buried in caves. As of March 21, 1945, only 152 Japanese and 60 Koreans had surrendered. The last Iwo Jima holdout surrendered in 1949. This page evaluates enemy morale of the 21,000 combatants on Iwo Jima. Enemy morale and discipline remained high. There were no mass surrenders. Combatants took their lives rather than being captured. Less than 1% surrendered, and many of those were seriously wounded and not up to offering any combat resistance. The POWs indicated that they knew resistance was futile or a lost cause. This information only increased their determination to take as many U.S. lives prior to their own death. They held their positions until annihilation or, if in a hopeless situation, suicide. By April 1945, a month after the Iwo Jima campaign, U.S. intelligence realized now is the time to intensify its psychological warfare campaign, with the goal of getting the Japanese soldier to surrender. From a 1945 Psychological Warfare Against Japan document, this list illustrates Japanese losses that have occurred up to April 1945. No Navy, no merchant ships, reduced Air Force, successful island hopping, taking the Philippines and Okinawa, and disrupting industry by blockage, mining, and bombing. The soldier's surrender hurdle was psychological. Getting the Japanese soldier to surrender is very important to the war effort. Japanese POWs were surveyed as to their obstacles to surrender. Once the 8 obstacles were known, U.S. intelligence group could counter these obstacles by dissemination of leaflets and voice through loudspeakers directed at the Japanese soldier. This page outlines the 8 reasons why the Japanese soldier is unwilling to surrender. We will review these items and show how these arguments were refuted with propaganda. Item number 1, lack of knowledge of the hopeless military situation. The dire condition of Japanese military and industry were not shared with the Japanese soldier. This page from a 1946 U.S. Army document on psychological warfare against the Japanese provides examples of misleading propaganda fed to the Japanese. Germany signed a peace treaty with Russia. Germany defeated the Allies on the Western Front, and Japan's Imperial Army had landed and is attacking San Francisco. This number 116 leaflet was dropped on Japanese troops to lower troop morale and convey the hopelessness of their situation. From a 1945 SIMPAC Psychological Warfare document, the leaflet's front and back sides are highlighted. The goal of the leaflet is to convince the troops through facts like their fleet has been wiped out, the U.S. occupies Japanese bases, and cannot outproduce the U.S. The Japanese cannot win this war. It is titled, "Open Your Eyes." The body of the flyer outlines the current state of Japanese military, territory, and production losses. Number 2, the Japanese believe that to surrender is cowardly and dishonorable. This page from a 1949 CIA psychological warfare document addresses a touchy subject of the Japanese Bushido warrior code. Never ridicule Emperor Hirohito. He was considered a divine god to the Japanese people. It was also taboo to use the term surrender. This implies a soldier is in disgrace and could never return home. The Bushido code demands death over surrender. The soldier could, however, stop resistance with honor if his capture was beyond his will. This would not be surrendered to him, and he would not be disgraced, all the same to the U.S. military. This leaflet number 517 was dropped over Japanese troops to persuade them to surrender by dispelling their Bushido code demanded death over surrender. Germany and other modern civilized societies recognize surrender under dire conditions as honorable. Why does your military code forbid surrender? This is not the Bushido code. The code says you should show generosity to your enemy and respect your opponent who you have fought but lost. This is because your leaders wish to hide their mistakes. Dead men tell no tales. Number 3, a fear that Japanese officers will discover their intent to surrender, stop resistance with honor, and kill them. Leaflet 1050 shows interned Japanese POWs lining up for a roll call. The goal of this leaflet is to entice Japanese soldiers to ignore their commanding officers and surrender. If you think there's no point in dying, relay your intentions to live with your commanding officer. If he is not in agreement, then part ways with him. You need to take decisive steps to live at the first opportunity. The U.S. military will not kill you. Number 4, fear the U.S. military will torture and kill you if you surrender. Channel commentary. This point seems to be the largest factor in the Japanese soldiers' reluctance to surrender. Based on over 500 captured Japanese documents, it is essential to convince the Japanese that they will not be tortured or killed if they surrender. From a 1945 13th Air Force intelligence document, the captured documents provide examples of U.S. killing POWs by burning them in oil, crushing them with tanks and bulldozers, and/or being tortured. All Japanese POWs pointed out that the U.S. committed atrocities on Guadalcanal. It is these stories that were used to convince the Japanese to commit suicide rather than be taken captive. This page lists examples of Japanese POWs describing Allied atrocities from a June 1945 intelligence document. The Allies are killing POWs by pulling them apart with wheels and crushing them with rollers. The POWs were told if taken prisoners, the Australians would kill them. In this example, 100 Japanese POWs were buried up to their necks and crushed with a tank. 75% of Japanese thought they would be killed or tortured upon capture, from a 1945 psychological warfare document. They had heard the U.S. had strung up 3,000 Japanese POWs with wires through their hands and crushed them with a steamroller. The U.S. tried to counter these false narratives with leaflets showing good treatment given to POWs. Leaflet number 118 describes POW treatment from the U.S. military. The U.S. is the most civilized people on the planet. They will not be brutal. Japanese leaders have perpetuated the myth of American brutality. This is nothing but false propaganda. Leaflet number 121 refutes the premise of U.S. brutality against POWs. Japanese leaders lie to their service personnel. The worst lie is that the U.S. will brutally kill those who surrender. Those who surrendered at Attu, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa were all well treated. Tens of thousands of Japanese are living well in U.S. POW camps. They are fed, clothed, work, and play games. Leaflet number 1041's theme is that it is critical to destroy the belief that torture and killing awaits any surrendering Japanese. Surrendering Japanese will not be killed. This is due to a future POW exchange, concern for a fellow human, or international law. The U.S. core belief is that life is not a cheap commodity. This concept is baked into society. If a soldier has stopped fighting, then he will be treated as a fellow human. The Bushido Warrior Code also agrees with this concept. Number 5, the Japanese lack the step-by-step mechanism to surrender. To provide a surrender mechanism, surrender passes were distributed to Japanese garrisons in China and Burma, as discussed in this May 1945 leaflet newsletter. They were effective. The carrier of the pass was promised honorable surrender treatment and food. Japanese used these passes to surrender in great numbers. This and other techniques kept the civilians at Okinawa from killing themselves like they did in Saipan. These passes help facilitate mass surrenders on Okinawa. This page shows an example of a surrender pass and the step-by-step instructions on how to surrender. These were distributed during the 1945 Luzon campaign. Notice the flyer's title is I Cease Resistance. To surrender, a soldier must raise a white cloth above their head on the far side of a river and drop their rifles at the water bank. Cross the river with your hands up and surrender to a U.S. soldier. U.S. soldiers are strictly instructed not to open fire on those crossing the river in this manner. If a U.S. soldier violates this order, he will be executed. They are also ordered not to harm a surrendering Japanese soldier. You can believe the information in this leaflet, as Americans are known for their kind treatment to Axis POWs. This offer also applies to those who've killed civilians and committed atrocities. Channel commentary. Around 217,000 Japanese died during the Philippine campaign, and another 45,000 surrendered. 20% of Japanese soldiers surrendered during the Philippine campaign versus less than 1% during the Iwo Jima campaign. These psychological warfare leaflets had an effect. Number 6, fear of family torture or disgrace back home. This reason is linked to number 8, a soldier who surrendered could never return back home. Almost all Burma POWs expressed the opinion they could never return to Japan. From this June 1945 leaflet newsletter, this would cause disgrace to themselves and their families. This principle was the most difficult to overcome. It is a major reason why soldiers did not surrender and chose death. A Japanese POW wanted his family to believe he died. He never wants them to know he was a POW. He can never return to Japan. The shame on his family would be too great. To mitigate this concern, Leaflet 531A states a POW's name will not be disclosed to Japan. Japan will never know you surrendered. Leaflet number 1039 dispels the notion that death awaits those who return to Japan. This will remove an important obstacle to surrendering. In 1939, 2,000 Japanese were captured by Russians and released. They were not killed when they returned to Japan. The Japanese Army Code states those who surrender without reason will be shot. Your reason for surrender may be valid depending on the circumstances. There are tens of thousands of Japanese POWs. It is not likely you will be shot when you are repatriated. Number 7, belief in Japanese destiny. The Japanese military has hammered into its peoples that Japan can only be victorious. Either it is victorious or it's annihilated. The U.S. will need the Japanese to understand a Japanese victory is impossible and annihilation is not the only alternative. Surrender does not mean annihilation. A new Japan will emerge if they accept the unconditional surrender terms. This will be a challenging intelligence task, as Japan has never lost a war, is the oldest empire in the world. Peoples are industrious, frugal, united, very patriotic, and dreamed of its destiny fit within the world. It enjoyed early war successes. It had captured around 20% of the world's population. Its people had been thoroughly indoctrinated. The Japanese believe that its troops are superior to all others. It attacks to win. Its soldiers never surrender. They are fighting a holy war to rid Asian from non-Asians. Propaganda leaflet number 123 tries to refute Japan's belief in its invincibility destiny. Key points are, the U.S. is winning all battles now. Germany surrendered on May 9, 1945. Russia revoked its neutrality pact with Japan. The U.S. occupies the Marianas, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. Many Japanese and bypassed islands are starving to death. This is your fate also. Thousands of surrendering Japanese troops are under the kind protection of the Americans. War's end is near. So how effective was the U.S. psychological warfare campaign? The leaflets had an effect on Japanese soldiers' morale during the Philippine campaign. In one instance, 66 of 66 soldiers who surrendered had U.S. propaganda leaflets on their person. Their morale was lowered by a combination of defeat, hunger, disease, lack of supply, and bad leadership. 75% of Japanese POWs admitted the leaflet's message influenced them to surrender. The Surrender Pass program was expanded due to its success. The passes may help in shortening the war and reduce U.S. casualties. Most Japanese said the leaflets had a major effect on their units, so much so that Japanese officers ordered the men not to pick up the leaflets. These leaflets and other psychological warfare tools were effective in disruption and assisting in defeating the enemy. The leaflets create uneasiness and confusion in the soldier's mind. They drove a wedge between the soldier and his officer and led to surrenders. This chart, based on a survey of Japanese POWs, indicate the effectiveness of the leaflet's message. The good treatment, no death or torture theme resonated as the most effective message, given its high favorable and low unfavorable score. Channel closing commentary. The U.S. spent a lot of resources tuning their psychological warfare propaganda message, countering each of the 8 reasons why the Japanese soldier resisted surrender. Common response to why the Japanese soldier did not surrender during World War II is much more than the Bushido warrior code forbade surrender. There were 7 other reasons why they did not surrender. It is likely fear of death at the hands of the U.S. and fear of returning home to face death may be higher factors in resisting surrender than the warrior code. Do you agree with the channel's interpretation of the data presented? If you have found this U.S. psychological warfare against the Japanese deep dive review interesting and informative, please consider commenting, liking, and or subscribing to World War II U.S. Bombers.